years ago.
Okay.
And nobody who's ever been to war or fought in any military capacity ever wants to start another unwinnable war. The only people who want to start wars...
All right, let's set the scene, because this is one of those conversations where confidence runs far ahead of evidence, and speculation starts masquerading as insight. You're about to hear James O'Brien field a series of calls about Donald Trump, global conflict, and America's role on the world stage. What begins as concern quickly drifts into theories, assumptions, and bold claims that don't quite survive contact with basic scrutiny. Some callers speak with absolute certainty. Others dress opinion up as expertise, and a few seem convinced that instinct alone is enough to explain incredibly complex geopolitical realities. Before we jump in, tell me where you're tuning in from, and remember to like and subscribe. Your support helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. What makes this exchange so revealing isn't raised voices or dramatic put-downs. It's the way simple questions expose shaky logic. Watch how James calmly presses for clarity. Notice how often confident claims dissolve when asked for examples, evidence, or consistency. This isn't about shutting people down. It's about testing ideas in the open. Let's get into it, because by the end of this discussion, you'll have a much clearer sense of the gap between what feels true, what sounds convincing, and what actually holds up under pressure.
Well, it's all too worrying, and I just wonder if Trump's finally realised that it's rather serious, and it isn't going to go away with just a bombing of any site where nuclear weapons might be being built. But also, I think he realises now that he's got a very weak chap in Pete Hegseth heading up the military. And also, it looks like he's already been sidelined, as is Tulsi Gabbard, who is the intelligence person.
I think a pause. Should we just pause for a moment to reflect upon those two appointments? And I mean, not laugh, because we could be upon the brink of some sort of hideous international military situation. Well, not even on the brink of it, but if America gets involved, everything gets bigger and worse. But he appoints people who are absolutely appalling, because the only way in which he can sustain power is to surround himself with complete incompetence. But then suddenly they matter, their job matters. And you're right, he's got this Fox News host in the Defense Department and this Kremlin apologist in the Intelligence Department. It's extraordinary. And
if you think of the parade he had on Saturday, organised by Hegseth, it wasn't exactly a success. It wasn't North Korea or China or even Red Square.
No, it was. It reminded me of Kidderminster Carnival in about 1978.
Without the catch and quick cops.
Yeah, exactly that. When Mum dressed me up as a lion using old zippers to make me a mane. So what's he going to do?
Well, I suppose not doing anything is going to save lives. I wish I knew. I hate looking at Benjamin Netanyahu, and I could say some pretty horrible things which aren't very,
Yes, of course. I mean, there's plenty of people saying horrible things about Benjamin Netanyahu. A borderless narcissist is what one Knesset member called him yesterday.
They're trying to stay out of prison, aren't they?
Yes, of course. Okay, so that's, I don't know what that is. It's an abstention, I think, Gay, almost, and that's kind of the point, but I need to push people a little harder than that. And remember, I'm saying I don't think he will join in on this one, but I'm also saying this doesn't go on my great list of predictions, which I can make based upon understanding things. And I often understand things thanks to your help, but on this one, I don't think there's anything to understand.
So I agree with you that he's not going to go into this war, and personally I think that's a good thing. I was a British soldier until 4 years ago, and nobody who's ever been to war or fought in any military capacity ever wants to start another unwinnable war. The only people who want to start wars and go into wars tend to be armchair generals in the media or in our political systems. And I think I have a lot of respect. I don't say this often, but for Trump, I have a lot of respect for him, because the pro-Israeli lobby is very, very powerful in the US and here in the UK. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu has kind of pushed himself too far, and now the world sees that following Israel's lead all the time is not good for the world.
He's not sanctioned Israel really in any way, and despite the early reports that they'd known nothing about what happened last weekend, it's pretty clear now that they knew everything about what happened last weekend. So they may not have joined in, but they certainly did nothing to stop it.
It's challenging for people because, I don't know how much you know about U.S. politics, but there's a group called AIPAC, and they used to be called ASMPAC. They're very powerful. That's why Joe Biden, despite what he said, he's fearful of that lobby because they have a lot of money. And
they have a lot of influence. Of course, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same here in the UK. With the Conservative Friends of Israel group, where you have people like Priti Patel. She went on a jolly mission and never got punished for it. I spent time in the Conservative Party as an activist, and I know generally how powerful the pro-Israel lobby here is in the UK.
I think most people listening to this program do. I know you're not claiming any particular levels of unique insight, but it is obviously a well-drilled observation. And if Donald Trump were to defy the wishes of the Israeli administration and many of their supporters outside of Israel, then I can see why you would admire him. It wouldn't matter whether he was doing it for reasons of self-interest or principle. You would get the result that you wanted to see, and many people want to see the same result. I don't know why. Well, that doesn't explain why you think he won't go in with Israel.
So he doesn't want to. If you look at over the last few days, people like Tucker Carlson and the other.
Steve Bannon has come out against Netanyahu as well, I think.
Yeah, even Joe Rogan, who is credited as being the podcasters who kind of pushed him to reach a new audience to get elected. They've turned against him. They don't want to see a foreign war. They don't want to see another country and America being brought, because just bombing from the air that doesn't win wars. No country has ever won a war just by bombing from the air. You have to physically be there, and there's no solution. Just bombing a reactor or a nuclear facility doesn't mean that the regime will capitulate. And who have they got to replace it? They've got the Shah, the Pahlavis, the Shah's son. They're a dictatorship. That's why Iran hates Israel, because at the time of the Shah, the Israelis were the best friends of the Shah, helping train the Shah's torture teams and regime thugs to keep. And I'm not saying the IRGC or anybody, the mullahs, are any better, but there's a genuine reason why the Iranians hate the Israelis. There is, if somebody tortured your family or your grandparents.
We've covered a lot of that this week, and the split among Iranian opposition to the administration between people who would welcome any intervention that toppled the regime and people who desperately desire the toppling of the regime but absolutely don't want it to be facilitated or achieved by Israel, whether alongside the United States of America or not. I mean, I would remind you of the 1953 coup in Iran, which was essentially masterminded by the United States, the TP Ajax project, and the UK were in lockstep with the States on that. I needed a bit of a crash course on that particular chapter yesterday after a caller brought it to my attention, but and I mention it only because once you start tugging at the threads of history, almost any opinion can fall apart. And looking at why he might not do this now, I think you've hit upon the biggest button, which would be because the people whose adulation he craves, if you want to be psychological about it, or whose support he needs, if you want to be political about it, are at best split and at worst opposed, and that may define which direction he goes in. Thank you, John.
I think personally, Trump's got two reasons for giving himself some time. No decision should be made on impulse. That's a sign of ADHD, and I don't think he has that. So he's a wise man.
Oh, shut up.
Listen, no.
No, come on. What's your favourite example of his wisdom?
He's a businessman.
Well, he certainly played one. He played a businessman on The Apprentice. But give me your favourite example of his wisdom.
I'm not a businessman, and Mr. Trump is. He's sitting on billions. I don't think you are, or neither am I. So,
give me your favourite example of his wisdom.
He was the reason there was no war between India and Pakistan.
No, he wasn't.
So he called peace there.
No, he didn't.
He did.
Okay, all right. And as he found, didn't he find the cure for the common cold the next day as well?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
All right, the man's a genius. I take it all back. Seriously, I can't continue this conversation. I mean, Donald Trump is a wise man. What an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. And also the fact that he doesn't act on impulse. What about grabbing women by the genitals? Is that something that he gives lots of thought to before he actually does it, or is that perhaps something that involves acting on impulse?
Okay, I see where this is going. All right.
Well, it's going to his examples of his behaviour described by himself, as opposed to what you're doing, which is coming up with examples of things that have never happened.
He's given himself 2 weeks to make a decision, to take his country into war. The Americans...
It's 10:45.
I think he's caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. I think he can be known as either an appeaser or a person that's detached Iran away from Russia and indeed China, which is what I suppose much of the American military would like. And also, I think he's probably going to be under pressure from President Xi, really, because Xi gets most of his oil from Iran, or 90%, I think, of his oil from Iran. So I think at the end of the day, it all depends on the casualty rate in Israel, really.
That's brutal, isn't it? Because that means, in a way, that people who want the United States to intervene more meaningfully are in the hideous position of recognising that what they want involves more casualties in Israel.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's going to be the overriding factor. I think the 2 week period, and I had to laugh at your analysis of the 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's
wasn't mine. Someone else put that together. But goodness me,
yeah, no, it's fantastic. But I think he's opened his mouth and just about called for regime change, which I don't think any American president should be doing. I think he's opened his mouth, and now he's realised that he hasn't got the team behind him to.
I mean, this is where the narcissistic nature. I probably need a better word than that, but it's to do something obvious and easy and claim that you're a genius is what he does. You could go bankrupt 5 times and you've still got people in the country who think that you're a business genius. But to do something obvious and easy and claim that it's a mark of your brilliant negotiating skills, and there's nothing obvious and easy here. There's no obvious and easy choice.
Yes, absolutely. And what is also missing is what happens if it all goes pear-shaped, and what happens if it all goes well, as the Americans found in Iraq when it goes pear-shaped. There is no strategy as to what happens. There's no outcome. There's no perceived outcome. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens?
And that, I think, if we learned anything from Iraq, that, as you say, would be the lesson that you'd hope Western powers learned. I think the public have learned it. I think the public were probably successfully primed for that intervention, despite those extraordinary marches of millions of people on the streets of the United Kingdom objecting to that intervention. Many people were persuaded by the 45-minute warning, by the dossier that later became known as the dodgy dossier, by the track record of Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell. But I think, to paraphrase Pete Townsend, they won't be fooled again.
First of all, we're going to get our violins out for Netanyahu's wife.
Yes, I think we can all agree. It's finally something we can all agree on. They are the real victims here. Carry on, Raj.
I was going to say, I think, on a more practical basis, I think this is a bit of a distraction back to this 2 week thing. I honestly think that because if they go and bomb this place where these enrichment is going on, you don't know what potential fallout of that going to be with the radioactive stuff. So I think, and I think the Israelis, they know exactly what the score is. They know exactly what to do with this position. I think they'll get some commandos, maybe backed up by the US, and they'll go directly into that area and dismantle it from the inside, as opposed to trying to bomb it.
And what does that do? What does that do? So that lets Trump stay out of it then?
Well, in some capacity, but also he might. But you don't know what the radioactive fallout could be if they just go and blow it up.
No, well, none of us do. I actually had a nuclear scientist in the studio earlier this week. I tried to ask him these questions, but between you and me, I wasn't sure I was qualified to understand his answers, and he had a magnificent ability to communicate.
I remember, I was listening to him.
He spoke with massive clarity, but we didn't really get to the bottom of how dangerous it is to try to attack a nuclear facility from the outside.
But I was going to say, the biggest thing for me on this one is going to be, unlike Iraq, unlike Libya, unlike Syria, where the West have been involved and caused a bit of a mess, the Israelis, they will not let this become a mess. They will make sure that whoever comes in charge after this regime will be a pro-Israel friendly leadership.
Like. I don't know what that looks like, really.
No, I don't know. Well, they're talking about the Shah, aren't they, or the Shah's son or something.
Who is?
Well, the West Star.
I'm not.
A lot of the Iranians that I speak to here in Manchester, they say that there's this person that they will rally behind to be the new sort of...
But they are most likely people who have fled Iran around the time of the Islamic revolution, precisely because of their proximity to the old regime. So I'm not sure either of us I've probably got a slightly better crack of the whip than you have, because I can throw open my phone lines to everybody in the world, whereas we are both going to be slightly confined to people who are almost, either children of or actual exiles, and that puts a different complexion on things. I'm not sure... The sort of king across the water, the Bonnie Prince Charlie figure, is particularly likely to assume the reins of power, but then who knows?
So, stepping back from all of that, what really stands out is how quickly certainty replaces substance in these conversations. We heard sweeping claims about Trump's wisdom, about global conflict, about military strategy and diplomacy. But again and again, those claims couldn't survive even the lightest challenge. The moment James asked for examples, for evidence, or for consistency, the theories started to wobble. What this exchange actually revealed wasn't some hidden master plan or deep geopolitical insight. It was something much more familiar. People projecting confidence onto a figure they admire and then working backwards to justify it. Trump is described as wise, calculated, and or restrained. Yet the examples offered either don't exist or collapse under basic fact-checking. And when that happens, the conversation doesn't move toward reflection. It moves toward deflection. At the same time, the discussion exposed a deeper tension running through modern political debate. Complex international crises are reduced to personality traits. Serious decisions about war and peace are reframed as gut instinct or business acumen. And history is selectively rewritten to support whatever conclusion feels most comfortable in the moment. James's role here wasn't to provide all the answers. It was to keep dragging the conversation back to reality, to remind callers that admiration isn't evidence, confidence isn't competence, and saying something firmly doesn't make it true. That's the real value of exchanges like this. Not the sharp lines or the viral moments, but the slow, uncomfortable exposure of ideas that only work when no one asks questions. So the takeaway isn't about Trump alone. It's about how easily political discussion slips into myth-making, and how necessary it is to keep pressing for clarity when it does. Because once we stop doing that, opinion becomes fact, loyalty replaces judgment, and the consequences stop being theoretical. As always, I'm curious what stood out to you most. Was it the certainty, the contradictions, or the moment a claim simply couldn't be defended anymore? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.